I was still holding my phone, staring at the message that said, "You're not on the list, Valentina." So why was my name printed in bold on the donor board behind them? Why was my family inside celebrating without me? And why did two police officers just pull up and walk straight toward me? "Are you Valentina Cook?" one of them asked, loud enough for my brother to hear. Ethan smirked. "Yeah, she's been causing a scene." The officer handed me a sealed envelope with a county stamp. My name, my address, my authority. My hands went cold as I tore it open and realized whatever my family had done. It was a lot bigger than leaving me off a guest list. If you're watching this, tell me where you're from and what time it is where you are. I didn't think I'd be telling this story, but maybe you've been the outsider too. And if you want to hear what happened next, stick with me. A week before that reunion, I was sitting at my kitchen counter in Atlanta staring at a spreadsheet I was never supposed to question. It had come through our family group email subject line, "Reunion Budget Final." Nothing unusual on the surface, just columns, numbers, names, venue, catering, decorations. But I work in compliance. Numbers don't just sit there for me, they talk, and this one was off. I scrolled slowly, letting my eyes adjust to the pattern. Donations, pledges, confirmed contributors. Some names had modest amounts next to them. A few had larger figures. Then I saw mine. Valentina Cook, $25,000 confirmed. I didn't remember committing $25, let alone $25,000. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled once, and then leaned forward again, slower this time. Sometimes your first reaction is emotion. Mine had learned to wait for proof. I checked the timestamp on the file. It had been updated late the night before. Around 11:48 p.m., I opened the earlier version attached in the thread. My name wasn't there. That was my first answer, which only led to more questions. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I clicked into the email chain and read through the messages I'd half ignored over the past week. My mom, Denise, had been leading most of it. Polite, upbeat, very careful with her wording. "Let's all do our part to make this reunion something we can be proud of." My Aunt Pat had followed up with reminders. "We'll be recognizing our major contributors during the event." And then my brother Ethan chimed in with something that at the time I'd brushed off. "Some of us already stepped up. Just saying." I closed my eyes for a second. There's a certain tone people use when they want you to feel guilty without asking you directly. My family had mastered it. I picked up my phone and called my mom. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, honey. You got the latest update?" I did, I said, keeping my voice even. "Can you explain why my name is listed as a $25,000 contributor?" There was a pause. Not long. Just long enough. "Oh, that," she said lightly. "We just assumed you'd be helping at that level. You've always done well for yourself." "I don't assume financial commitments," I replied. "I confirm them. And I didn't confirm this." "Well," she said a little sharper now, "it's family Valentina. It's not like we're asking for something unreasonable." I stared at the spreadsheet again. "That depends on whether you're asking or assigning." Another pause. Longer this time. "You're overthinking this," she said. "Everyone's pitching in. Even Ethan." I almost laughed, but I didn't. Ethan pitching in and Ethan putting his name on something are not the same thing. That landed. I could hear it in the silence. "Look," she continued softer. "Now this reunion is important. People are coming from out of state. We want to present ourselves well. It reflects on all of us." There it was. Not money, not logistics, image. "And using my name without asking reflects on me," I said. "You're part of this family," she snapped. "Or at least you used to be. I let that sit between us." "I'll come to the reunion," I said finally, "but I'm not approving any financial commitment I didn't agree to." Her tone cooled instantly. Talk about it there." We ended the call, but the conversation didn't feel finished. It felt filed away. I set my phone down and went back to the spreadsheet. If this had been a client at work, I'd flag 3 things immediately: unauthorized commitment, reputational leverage, and inconsistent documentation. I opened the Properties tab on the file. Last modified by Patricia Reynolds. Timestamp 11:48 p.m. That lined up. I wasn't surprised. Aunt Pat had always been the one who handled details. She also had a habit of bending them. I scrolled further down and saw a section labeled Recognition Program. Gold tier, silver tier, platinum tier. My name was listed under platinum. That wasn't just a number. That was a position. A signal to everyone in that room about who mattered. And I hadn't agreed to it. I took screenshots. Every page. Every version I could find. Then I did something my family would later regret. I didn't argue again. I didn't send a long message. I didn't warn them. I documented. Because if there's one thing I've learned in my job, it's this: people who manipulate quietly depend on you reacting loudly. I wasn't going to give them that. My phone buzzed just as I finished saving the last file. A new message. From an unknown number. Final guest list confirmed. If your name isn't on it, please respect event boundaries. No signature. No explanation. Just that. I clicked the attached PDF. Names filled the screen. Families grouped together. Couples. Kids. I scrolled once. Twice. 3 times. My name wasn't there. Not under Cook. Not under any variation. I checked again slower this time, like maybe I'd missed something obvious. I hadn't. They had used my name to elevate their event, and erased me from it at the same time. For a moment I just sat there. Not angry. Not yet. Just clear. I thought about not going. About letting them have their performance without interruption. But then I looked back at the spreadsheet, at the number next to my name, at the word confirmed, and I realized something. They weren't just excluding me, they were counting on me staying quiet. I picked up my phone again. This time I didn't call my mom. I booked a ride to the resort. If they were going to use my name in that room, I was going to be there when they did it. What I didn't know yet, what I couldn't have known sitting in that quiet kitchen, was that by the time I got there, I wouldn't just be dealing with my family anymore. The resort looked exactly like the kind of place my family wanted to be seen in. Glass walls, polished stone floors, staff who smiled like they'd been trained not to notice tension. I stepped out of the rideshare and took a second before walking in. Not to hesitate, just to settle. There's a difference. Inside, the lobby was already alive with voices, laughter, familiar tones I hadn't heard in years or had chosen not to. For a brief second, it almost felt normal. Then I walked up to the front desk. "Hi," I said, sliding my ID across the counter. "I'm here for the Cook family reunion. Valentina Cook." The receptionist smiled, typing quickly. Her fingers paused halfway through. Just one moment, she said, her tone still polite but tighter. She clicked again. Then once more. "I'm sorry," she said finally, looking up. "I'm not seeing your name on the guest list." "I'm aware," I replied evenly. "Can you check under event sponsors or contributors?" That made her hesitate again. She switched screens. "Oh," she said softly. "Yes, I do see your name here, under major contributors." I nodded. "So I'm associated with the event." "Yes," she said carefully. "But the access list is separate." "Who manages that list?" I asked. She glanced to the side, lowering her voice. "It was updated late last night, by a Patricia Reynolds." "Of course it was." "Can you call her?" I asked. Before she could answer, a security guard stepped up beside me. Not aggressive. Just Present. Ma'am, he said politely, we've been instructed to only allow pre-approved guests into the ballroom. I'm not trying to bypass anything I said. I'm trying to resolve a discrepancy involving my name being used for this event. He gave a small nod, but his stance didn't change. I understand, but I still can't let you in without authorization. Behind me. I could hear footsteps slowing, conversations dipping just enough to listen. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. Word travels fast in families like mine, especially when it's about someone who's out of line. Is Patricia inside? I asked. The receptionist nodded slightly. She checked in about an hour ago. And Ethan Cook, I added. Yes. I let out a slow breath. Okay, I said. Then I'll wait. The guard looked surprised. Maybe he expected me to argue, to raise my voice, to give him a reason to escalate. I didn't. Instead, I stepped to the side near a display wall just outside the ballroom entrance. That's when I saw it. A large professionally printed board, framed, backlit. Cook family reunion honoring our legacy underneath rows of names. Gold tier, silver tier, and at the top platinum contributors. I didn't need to get closer to know what I'd find. But I did anyway. There it was. Valentina Cook Platinum Sponsor. The number wasn't listed, but it didn't need to be. The placement said everything. I took out my phone and snapped a photo. Then another closer one. Proof of representation. Proof of intent. Proof that my name was doing work for them even while I stood outside. Didn't expect to see you here. I turned. Ethan. Same tailored jacket. Same easy confidence. Same look he used when he thought he was already winning. I didn't expect to be left off the guest list, I said. He smiled like that was a joke we both understood. Come on, Valentina. You know how these things go. Limited space. Priorities. Interesting priorities, I said, gesturing slightly toward the board. Especially for someone contributing at the highest level. His eyes flicked to it for half a second, then back to me. That's just recognition, he said. Doesn't mean access. I studied him. Not his words, his timing. You used my name, I said. Not a question. We used the family name, he corrected smoothly. My full name, I said. Attached to a financial commitment I didn't make. He shrugged. It's all within the family. No one's getting hurt. That depends on whether anyone relied on that information, I replied. Something in his expression shifted. Just slightly. You always do this, he said. Turn everything into a problem. And you always assume I won't check, I said. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then he leaned in a little closer, lowering his voice. It's already done, Valentina, he said. Everything's been signed off. You showing up here now doesn't change that. Signed off. I held on to that phrase. Signed by who I asked. He hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Don't start, he said, straightening. You're not even part of this event, and yet my name is funding it, I said. His jaw tightened. Look, he said, his tone sharpening. If you didn't want to be involved, you should have said something earlier. I did, I said calmly. You just chose not to hear it. A few people had fully turned toward us now, not openly staring, but close enough. Ethan noticed. He stepped back, adjusting his jacket like he was resetting the scene. Security, he said, gesturing lightly toward the guard. Can you make sure she doesn't disrupt the event? There it was. Not confrontation. Control. The guard stepped closer again. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to remain outside. I'm already outside, I said. Ethan gave a short laugh. Then maybe it's time to leave. I didn't move. Instead, I looked past him through the open ballroom doors. People were mingling, smiling, drinking, standing beneath a version of our family that had been carefully edited. And right at the entrance, a smaller sign caught my eye. All donations processed through Cook Heritage Fund. There it was. Not just a reunion, a structure, a channel, something bigger than a few inflated names on a board. I took another photo, this one slower. Ethan followed my gaze. "You're making this messy for no reason," he said. "No," I replied quietly. "I'm making it visible." His expression hardened. "Whatever you think you're doing," he said, "you're too late." I slipped my phone back into my bag. Maybe I said? Then I turned and walked toward the exit. Not because I was done, because I had enough. Behind me, I could feel his eyes on my back, measuring, calculating. Let him. He thought this was already over. He thought everything had been signed, sealed, contained. But as I stepped outside into the afternoon light, my phone buzzed in my hand. An incoming call. "Jasmine," I answered without slowing down. "Tell me you found something I said." Her voice came through sharp and focused. "I did," she said, "and you need to hear this before you go back in there." I stopped walking. "What is it?" I asked. There was a brief pause on the line. Then she said, "Valentina, your name isn't just on their donor list." My grip tightened around the phone. "Then where else is it?" I asked. "Valentina, your name isn't just on their donor list." I stayed where I was, just outside the glass doors, the noise of the reunion muffled behind me. "Then where else is it?" I asked. Jasmine didn't answer right away. I could hear typing in the background, fast and precise. "It's on the registration documents for the fund," she said finally. "Cook Heritage Fund, filed 3 days ago with the state." My stomach dropped, not in panic. In recognition. Registered as what I asked. A temporary charitable entity, she said. Structured to collect and disperse funds for a family legacy initiative. "That sounds vague on purpose." "It is," she replied. "But that's not the issue." I leaned against the side of the building, keeping my voice low. "Then what is, according to the filing?" she said carefully. "You're listed as a co-authorizing party." I closed my eyes for a second. "Co-authorizing what exactly?" "Financial disbursements," she said. "Any movement of funds above 10,000 requires your authorization, along with one other signature." I opened my eyes again, slower this time. "And who's the other signature?" A brief pause. "Ethan." Of course it was. "So they can't actually move large amounts without me," I said, thinking out loud. "Not legally," Jasmine replied. "But here's the problem. They submitted a digital authorization already." My grip tightened on the phone. "Using my name?" "Yes," she said. "And the signature attached doesn't match the specimen you have on file at your bank." That part mattered more than anything else. "Good," I said quietly. Jasmine caught the shift in my tone. "That's not a small issue, Valentina. That's identity misuse. Potential fraud." "I know," I said. "But it also means they made a mistake." "What do you mean?" "They assumed I wouldn't check," I said. "And they assumed no one else would either." Jasmine exhaled slowly. "There's more." I pushed myself off the wall, standing straighter. "Go on." I pulled the initial transaction logs tied to the fund, she said. "There's already money moving through it." "How much?" "Rough estimate, just under 80,000 so far. Multiple donors." My eyes drifted back toward the ballroom doors. People were still smiling inside, drinking, trusting. "And where is it going?" I asked. "That's the part that's not clean," she said. "It's routed through a holding account first, then split. Split where I don't have full visibility yet," she said. "But one of the outgoing transfers is flagged to a business account." "Whose business?" Another pause, working on confirming that she said. But Valentina, you need to understand something. I do, I said. They're using my name to legitimize the fund. That makes donors trust it. That makes the money flow. And it makes you legally exposed if anything goes wrong, she added. I know. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then Jasmine's voice shifted, more urgent now. I also checked the filing timestamp, she said. The document with your signature was uploaded at 11:48 p.m. last night. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That's when the guest list was updated, I said. Exactly, she replied. They locked everything in at the same time. Control the narrative. Control the access. Control the money. All in one move. Jasmine. I said if we challenge this, what happens? You can file for an emergency preservation order, she said. Freeze further transactions until the signatures are verified. And how fast can that happen? If we move now, within hours. I looked at the entrance again. Ethan was still near the doorway talking to someone, laughing like nothing was wrong. He really believed this was contained. Do it, I said. Are you sure? Jasmine asked. Once this starts, it's not a private family issue anymore. It stopped being private when they used my name, I said. Another pause. Okay, she said. I'll loop in Howard and file the request. One more thing, I added. Yeah, don't warn them. Jasmine gave a short, knowing exhale. I wasn't planning to. We hung up. I slipped my phone back into my bag and stood there for a moment, letting everything settle into place. They had built this carefully, structured it, timed it, framed it as something respectable, and for a while it probably worked, but they made one assumption that didn't hold, that I would either go along with it or walk away. I turned back toward the building. Inside, the music had picked up. A microphone check echoed faintly through the doors. They were moving into the main program. Recognition, speeches, public moments. Exactly where my name would matter most. I walked back toward the entrance. The same security guard straightened when he saw me approaching. Ma'am, he began, already preparing to stop me. I won't cause a disruption, I said calmly. I just need to speak with Patricia Reynolds. He hesitated. Before he could answer, the doors opened from the inside. My mother stepped out. Denise Cook looked exactly like she always did at events, composed, controlled, perfectly dressed. But when her eyes landed on me, something flickered. Not guilt. Concern. Valentina, she said, her voice low. We need to talk. I agree, I said. She glanced back over her shoulder, then stepped closer to me. This isn't the place, she added. No, I said. It isn't. For a second, it almost felt like we were on the same side of something. Then she lowered her voice even further. You don't understand how much is tied into this, she said. If you make this bigger than it needs to be, they already made it bigger. I cut in. I'm just responding. Her jaw tightened. It's family, she said. We handle things quietly. I held her gaze. You used my name without consent, I said. That's not quiet. That's deliberate. She didn't deny it. Instead, she shifted. Pat handled the paperwork, she said. If something wasn't clear, we can fix it after the event, after the money had moved, after the image had been secured. No, I said. We fix it now. Her eyes hardened. You're about to embarrass everyone in there, she said. I thought about that. About the donors. About the trust they placed in a name that wasn't being used honestly. I'm about to make sure no one else gets misled, I said. She stepped back slightly, studying me. For the first time, I saw it clearly. She didn't think I'd go through with it. Not really. Behind her, I could see movement inside the ballroom, people gathering, the MC stepping up to the stage. The program was starting. Denise followed my gaze, then looked back at me. "Don't do this," she said quietly. I met her eyes. "Then stop me," I replied. Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut through from inside. "Ladies and gentlemen, if we could have your attention, the opening announcement." The moment they had been building toward. And right on cue, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Jasmine. Filed. Order submitted. Authorities notified. I looked up. Across the entrance, Ethan had just noticed me again. And this time he wasn't smiling. Ethan started toward me before I could even step inside. Not rushed, not panicked, just fast enough to show he was no longer comfortable. "Who were you talking to?" he asked, his voice low but tight. I didn't answer that. Still worried about the guest list, he added louder now, like he wanted the people nearby to hear something small and harmless. "I'm not worried about the list," I said. "I'm interested in what you meant earlier." His expression didn't change, but his shoulders did just slightly. "What do you think I meant? You said everything had already been signed off," I replied. "I want to know what you think I signed." For a second, he looked like he might laugh it off again. But he didn't. Instead, he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You always make things harder than they need to be," he said. "This is a family event. People came here to celebrate, not watch you dissect paperwork. And people donated money based on my name," I said. "That makes it my business." "That makes it our business," he corrected. "Family." I let that word hang there. "Family doesn't mean you get to decide for me," I said. Behind him, the doors to the ballroom opened wider. Music faded down. Applause started to build. They were moving into the program. "Look," Ethan said, his tone shifting again, less sharp, more persuasive. "We needed this to work. The fund, the reunion, everything. You know how things have been." I didn't respond. He continued anyway. "Mom's been under pressure. The house, the debts. This wasn't just about a party. This was about fixing things. By using my name," I asked. "By using what we have," he said. "You have credibility. People trust you. That helps everyone." It sounded almost reasonable if you ignored the part where I never agreed, and the signature I asked. His jaw tightened. "It's just a formality," he said. "Nothing's actually coming out of your account." "That's not what the document says," I replied. His eyes flicked just for a second. "You've seen it?" he asked. "Enough," I said. Another pause. This one heavier. "You're not going to do anything with this," he said quietly. Not a question. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked past him again into the ballroom. The MC stood at the front now, microphone in hand. People were settling into their seats. Glasses clinked. Conversation softened into attention. A screen behind the stage lit up with a title slide, "Honoring Our Legacy, the Cook Heritage Fund." My name was going to come up again in there. I turned back to Ethan. "What exactly is the fund supposed to do?" I asked. He blinked, like that wasn't the question he expected. "It's for the family," he said. "Education support, property preservation, stuff like that." Defined how I pressed. "We'll figure that out as we go," he said, irritation creeping back in. "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point," I said. "You're collecting money without a clear structure, using my name to validate it." His patience snapped a little. "You think too small," he said. "This is about building something long-term, something that actually helps us." "Then build it legally," I said. "We are," he shot back. The paperwork's filed, with a forged signature. His eyes hardened. "No one's calling it that," he said. I replied. For a moment, we just stood there. Two versions of the same family facing each other with completely different definitions of what was acceptable. Then Ethan exhaled like he was done negotiating. "Just Stay out of it tonight, he said. Let the event happen. Tomorrow we can sit down, fix whatever you think is wrong, and move forward. There it was again. Delay. Contain. Smooth over. I shook my head. That only works if nothing else happens tonight, I said. Nothing is going to happen, he said quickly. I held his gaze. That depends on whether anything's already been set in motion. He didn't like that. You're not listening, he said. You showing up like this, questioning things, talking about signatures, you're going to make people nervous. Maybe they should be, I said. He leaned in again, voice dropping lower. Do you really want to do this to Mom? He asked. In front of everyone. There it was. Not logic, not legality, guilt. I let that sit for a second. I didn't put her in this position, I said quietly. You did. His expression shifted again, this time something closer to frustration than control. You don't get it, he said. We were trying to protect the family. From what I asked. From falling apart, he said. I studied him. For a second, I almost believed he believed that. And that was the problem. Intent doesn't erase impact. You don't fix a foundation by faking the paperwork, I said. He didn't respond. Instead, he stepped back, glancing toward the stage. Fine, he said. Do whatever you think you need to do. It wasn't permission. It was distance. He turned and walked back toward the ballroom entrance, blending into the flow of people heading inside. I stayed where I was, not because I was unsure, because I was choosing the moment. Inside, the MC's voice carried clearly now. Tonight we celebrate not just where we come from, but where we're going. And that future is being made possible by the generosity of a few key individuals. I could already guess what came next. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. The screenshots were still there, the emails, the timestamps. Everything I needed to show a pattern. But I also knew something else now. This wasn't just about a name on a board. Money had already moved, and somewhere in that movement there was a line that had been crossed. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Jasmine. Update: one of the outgoing transfers is linked to a registered business account. I typed back quickly, whose 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then her reply came through. It's under a holding company, but the registered officer... I stared at the screen. Is Ethan Cook. I looked up, through the glass. I could see him now, standing near the front, shaking hands, smiling like everything was exactly where it should be. For a second I just watched him, then I locked my phone, because whatever happened next wasn't going to stay behind closed doors. The patrol car didn't rush in. It rolled into the lot like it belonged there, slow, controlled, impossible to ignore. The music inside kept playing for a few seconds longer, like the room hadn't caught up yet. But people near the entrance had. Heads turned. Conversations thinned. Someone near the door stepped aside before they even realized why. Ethan saw it too. I watched the exact moment it hit him, that small recalculation behind his eyes. Not panic. Not yet. Just awareness. Stay here, he muttered to someone beside him, then started walking toward the entrance again. Toward me. Toward the officers stepping out of the car. 2 of them. Same uniforms as before, but this time they moved with purpose, not curiosity. One glanced at a notepad. The other scanned the area, once taking in Face's exit's movement. They weren't here to guess. They were here because something had already been set in motion. Ethan reached me a second before they did. What did you do? He asked under his breath. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. One of the officers stepped forward. Valentina Cook, he said. Yes. His tone shifted, formal but not accusatory. We have documentation for you, he said, holding out a sealed envelope with a county stamp. Ethan let out a short, almost relieved breath.
"Oh, this is ridiculous,"
he said louder now. "She's been making a scene all afternoon. If this is about trespassing." "It's not," the officer said calmly. That one word landed harder than anything else so far. Ethan's mouth closed. The officer didn't even look at him again. "Ms. Cook," he continued, "this is a court-filed request for immediate preservation of financial records connected to the Cook Heritage Fund." I took the envelope. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Behind me, I could feel more people gathering near the entrance. Not close enough to interrupt, but close enough to hear. "What does that mean?" Ethan asked, his voice tighter now. The second officer answered this time. "It means no further transactions tied to that entity are to be processed until verification is completed," he said, "and that relevant parties may be contacted for statements." "Relevant parties," Ethan repeated. The officer met his eyes briefly. "Anyone associated with the fund." There it was. Not accusation, not yet, but a widening circle. I opened the envelope. The document inside was clean, direct, impossible to misinterpret. My name appeared near the top not as a donor, as a listed co-authorizing individual whose signature required verification. Below that, a line I had been waiting for: request granted, temporary suspension of disbursement authority pending signature validation. They couldn't move the money anymore. Not without me. I exhaled slowly, feeling something shift into place. Not victory. Control. Ethan stepped closer, trying to read over my shoulder. "What is that?" he asked. I didn't hand it to him. "You said everything was signed off," I replied. "Turns out that matters more than you thought." His jaw tightened. "This doesn't prove anything he said. It's just a request." "It's a granted request," I corrected. "That doesn't mean there's a case. It means there's enough concern to stop you," I said. For a moment, he looked like he might argue again. Then he glanced past me at the officers, at the small crowd forming at the doors still open behind him. The stage inside had gone quiet. Someone had noticed. Of course they had. Moments like this don't stay contained. "Can we not do this here?" he said lower now. Not commanding, asking. I held his gaze. "You asked me to stay out of it tonight." "Tonight," I said. "This is what staying out of it would have cost." He didn't respond. Instead, he ran a hand over the back of his neck, exhaling sharply. "This is getting out of hand," he muttered. "No," I said. "It's finally in the open." Behind him, my mother appeared at the entrance again. Denise moved quickly this time, her composure thinner than before. "What's going on?" she asked, looking from me to the officers to Ethan. No one answered immediately, so she looked at me. "Valentina," she said, her voice tight. "What did you do?" I met her eyes. "I made sure my name isn't used without my consent," I said. "That's not what this looks like," she snapped, gesturing toward the officers. "This is exactly what it looks like," I replied. One of the officers stepped in slightly, not interrupting, just anchoring the moment. "Ma'am," he said to Denise, "we're not making any arrests. We're delivering notice of a legal request tied to the fund." "A legal request," she repeated. "Yes," he said. "Financial activity is being reviewed. We're advising all parties to preserve relevant records." Denise's expression shifted. Not confusion. Calculation. She looked at Ethan. "What did you file?" she asked him quietly. "I didn't." He started, then stopped. That hesitation was enough. For now, the officer continued. "We recommend that any event activity related to fundraising or public solicitation be paused." The words hung in the air, paused. Not shut down, not canceled, but no longer safe to continue as planned. Inside, someone near the stage tried to restart the program. "Ladies and gentlemen." But the room wasn't listening anymore. People were turning, whispering, watching the entrance, watching us. Ethan noticed it too. "This is going to ruin everything," he said under his breath. I looked at him. "No," I said quietly. "What you did is what's ruining it." He didn't argue this time. He couldn't, because for the first time since I arrived, he didn't control the narrative anymore. I folded the document carefully and slid it back into the envelope. Then I looked toward the ballroom, the lights, the people, the version of our family that had been carefully constructed for tonight. And I made a decision. "I'm going inside," I said. Ethan's head snapped back toward me. "For what?" "To finish this," I replied. Denise stepped in front of me, her voice urgent now. "Don't," she said. "Not in there." I paused, not because I was reconsidering, because I wanted her to understand. "You said we handle things quietly," I said. "You stopped that from being possible." Her eyes searched mine, looking for hesitation. There wasn't any. Behind her, the MC stood frozen near the stage, microphone still in hand, waiting for someone to tell him what to do. The entire room was suspended, waiting. I stepped past my mother and walked toward the doors. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. Because this wasn't about creating a scene. It was about correcting one. And as I crossed the threshold into that room, every conversation dropped just a little lower. Every head turned just a little more. Some people recognized me. Some didn't. But they all recognized something else. That whatever was about to happen next wasn't part of the program. The room didn't go completely silent. It never does. But the sound changed, like a crowd collectively deciding whether to listen or pretend not to. I kept walking, not toward the back, not to a seat, straight down the center aisle, the kind of walk you can't take back once you start. The MC lowered the microphone slightly, unsure whether to continue or step aside. He looked toward my mother, waiting for direction. Neither of them moved. So I kept going. When I reached the front, I didn't ask for permission. "Can I have the mic for a moment?" I said, my voice calm enough that it didn't sound like a request. The MC hesitated, then handed it over. That alone told me everything about the room. No one wanted to be the one who stopped me. I turned to face the audience. Rows of faces, some familiar, some not, some already uncomfortable. "Good. My name is Valentina Cook," I said, "and some of you might recognize it from the board outside." A ripple moved through the room, small, controlled. "But there. I won't take long," I continued. "But there's something I need to clarify before this event goes any further." Behind me, I could feel Ethan shifting, my mother standing very still. "Over the past week, I said my name has been listed as a major contributor to the Cook Heritage Fund. I let that settle. I want to be very clear," I added. "I did not authorize any financial contribution to this fund." This time the ripple was louder. Not panic, but attention. A man near the front leaned forward slightly. A woman beside him whispered something under her breath. "I also did not sign any document granting permission for my name to be used in connection with financial activity," I continued. Behind me, Ethan finally stepped closer. "Valentina," he started. I didn't turn. "I'm not finished," I said, still facing the room. The microphone carried it cleanly. He stopped. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. "I understand that many of you donated," I said. "And I understand that you did so in good faith based in part on the credibility attached to my name." A few heads nodded. Not openly, but enough. "I take that seriously," I said. I lifted my phone slightly, so I checked. I tapped the screen and turned slightly, angling it toward the front row. "This is the donor board displayed at the entrance," I said. "My name is listed under Platinum Contributors." Then I switched to the next image. This is the budget file circulated within the family email group. It lists my contribution as confirmed. Another shift in the room. Now people were connecting the pieces. And this, I said, holding up the last image, is the official filing for the Cook Heritage Fund, where my name appears as a co-authorizing party on financial disbursements. That one landed. Because it wasn't just about a party anymore. It was about control, about money, about trust. "I did not sign that document," I said. Silence. Not the passive kind. The kind that demands an explanation. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, tight, controlled. "This is a misunderstanding," Denise said. "We can address this privately." "No," I said, finally turning slightly toward her. "We can't." I faced the room again. "Because this isn't just about me," I continued. "It's about anyone who made a decision based on information that wasn't accurate." A man in the second row raised his hand halfway, then dropped it again. He didn't need to speak. His reaction was enough. "I've already taken steps to make sure no further transactions happen until everything is verified," I said. Now the shift was undeniable. People sat straighter. Eyes moved between me and Ethan. What steps someone called from the side. I nodded once. "An emergency request was filed to preserve all financial records connected to the fund," I said, "and that request has been granted." The words moved through the room like a current. Preserve. Granted. Official. Real. Ethan stepped forward again this time, not trying to interrupt, but to control the damage. "There's no need to escalate this," he said, addressing the room now. Everything was handled with the best intentions. "If there's a technical issue with documentation, we'll fix it." I watched him carefully. Same tone, same confidence. But something underneath it had changed. "Intent doesn't change authorization," I said. He looked at me. "For the last time, Valentina." "This is family," he said. And for the last time, I replied, "Family doesn't override consent." That landed harder than anything else so far. Because it wasn't just about the fund. It was about a line. One I hadn't drawn before. I turned back to the audience. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone," I said. "I'm here to make sure that if your name or your money is involved in something, it's done with your full understanding and agreement." A woman in the front row nodded openly now. Others followed more subtly. Trust doesn't disappear all at once. It shifts, quietly, and then all at once. Behind me I heard movement. My Aunt Pat. She stepped forward, her heels sharp against the floor, her expression tight but controlled. "Valentina," she said, voice measured, "you're making assumptions based on incomplete information." I turned to face her fully now. "Then complete it," I said. She held my gaze. "We have a signed authorization," she said. "From you." There it was. The claim she had been holding on to. I nodded once. "Then let's verify it," I said. Her expression flickered just for a second. That was all I needed. Because if that document is valid, I continued, "This ends here." A small pause. "And if it's not," I added, "then we have a different conversation." The room leaned into that silence. Waiting. Measuring. Pat straightened slightly. "We can review that later," she said. "Right now, this event—" "No," I said, steady. "Now." The word didn't need to be louder, just clear. For the first time, she didn't have an immediate response. And in that space, in that hesitation, the balance shifted. Because it wasn't about what I could prove anymore. It was about what they couldn't. For a moment, no one moved. Not my aunt. Not my mother. Not even That silence wasn't empty anymore. It was pressure. Now I repeated a little softer this time, but it carried farther. Patricia Reynolds let out a controlled breath, the kind people take when they're deciding how much they're willing to lose in public. "This isn't how legal verification works," she said, her tone sharpening just enough to sound authoritative. "We don't conduct document reviews in the middle of a family event." "You already conducted a signing without me," I replied. "This is just the part where we check if it's real." A few people shifted in their seats. Not loudly, but noticeably. Pat glanced toward Ethan. He didn't step in this time. That told me everything. "Fine," she said. "If you want to make this a spectacle, I cut in. "I want clarity." I turned slightly, looking toward the side of the stage. "Howard," I called. There was a brief pause. Then a man stepped forward from the edge of the room, calm, composed, carrying a slim folder. Howard Blake didn't look like he belonged to the chaos in that room, which was exactly why I'd asked him to come. "I'm here," he said, stepping up beside me. The shift in the room was immediate, not because of who he was, but because of what he represented. Structure, process, consequence. Pat's expression tightened. "You brought a lawyer to a family reunion," she asked. "You brought paperwork to a family without consent," I said. "This balances it." Howard didn't waste time. "Ms. Reynolds," he said evenly, "you stated there's a signed authorization from Ms. Cook. We'd like to review it." Pat held his gaze. "And you are counsel for Ms. Cook," he replied. A flicker of irritation crossed her face. "This is unnecessary," she said. "We've already confirmed with whom Howard asked," still calm. She hesitated. "Just enough." Ethan stepped forward, then trying to regain footing. "We have the document," he said. "It's valid." "Then presenting it should be straightforward," Howard replied. Another pause. This one longer, because now it wasn't just me asking, it was someone who knew exactly what to look for. Pat finally turned, signaling to someone near the back of the stage. A moment later, a slim folder was brought forward. She took it, held it for a second, then handed it to Howard. "Here," she said. "You can review it, but I expect an apology when this is cleared up." Howard didn't respond. He opened the folder carefully. The room leaned in again. Even the people who didn't fully understand what they were looking at could feel the weight of it. He scanned the first page, then the second. Then he paused. Not dramatically, just long enough. "What is it?" Ethan asked. Howard didn't look up immediately. Instead, he turned one page, slightly angling it toward me. I stepped closer. There it was. My name. A digital signature. Clean. Sharp. Convincing at a glance. But I didn't need a glance. I leaned in just enough to see the details. The timestamp. The formatting. The embedded verification line. And I knew. Howard closed the folder halfway and finally looked up. "This document has multiple inconsistencies," he said. The words didn't explode. They settled. Slow and heavy. "What kind of inconsistencies?" someone from the audience asked. Howard remained composed. "The timestamp does not align with the system used to generate Ms. Cook's verified signature records," he said. "Additionally, the originating IP address does not correspond to any known device associated with her." A murmur moved through the room. Not confusion. Recognition. People might not understand legal language, but they understand when something doesn't add up. "That doesn't prove anything," Ethan said quickly. "Systems glitch. Records mismatch." "This isn't a glitch," Howard said, still calm. "It's a pattern." That word landed harder. Pattern. Because it implied repetition. Intent. Pat stepped forward again, her voice tighter now. "You're making assumptions based on technicalities," she said. "No," Howard replied. I'm identifying discrepancies that require formal investigation. Denise spoke, then her voice lower, more controlled than before. Can this be resolved without escalating further, she asked. There it was again. Containment. Not denial, not anymore. Just damage control. I looked at her. For a moment I saw something different in her expression. Not just calculation. Fear. Not for me. For what this was turning into. You asked me to handle this quietly, I said. This is what quiet looks like when it's done right. She didn't respond. Behind her, Ethan's composure was slipping just enough to show. Okay, he said, exhaling sharply. Let's say there's an issue with the document. That doesn't mean anyone intended harm. I turned toward him. Then explain the money, I said. He froze. Just for a second. But it was enough. Howard glanced at me briefly, then back to Ethan. What money, he asked. I held Ethan's gaze. The transfers, I said. From the fund. The room shifted again. Now it wasn't just about signatures. It was about where the money went. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's irrelevant right now, he said. No, I replied. That's exactly what makes it relevant. Howard closed the folder fully now. If funds have already been disbursed under a disputed authorization, he said that significantly changes the situation. Pat's composure cracked just slightly. That's not confirmed, she said. It will be, I replied. Silence again. Heavier this time. Because now there were fewer places left to stand. Denise looked between us, between the document, the room, the people who had trusted them enough to show up. What exactly are you saying? She asked me quietly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I'm saying, I said, that this isn't just a misunderstanding anymore. I let that sit. Then added, and it's not staying inside this room. That was the moment everything changed. Not when the document was questioned. Not when the signature was challenged. But when it became clear that this wasn't going to be contained. Ethan looked at me like he was seeing something new. Not a problem to manage. Not a sister to pressure. Something else. And for the first time that night, he didn't have a response ready. No one tried to restart the program. No one reached for the microphone. The room had moved past that point. What exactly are you saying? My mother repeated, quieter this time. Not for the room. For me. I looked at her, then at Ethan, then back at the people sitting in front of us. I'm saying the money that was collected under this fund may not be where people think it is, I said. There it was. Plain. Direct. No legal language to soften it. A man in the front row leaned forward again, this time not hiding it. Where is it then? He asked. All eyes shifted to Ethan. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he exhaled slowly like he was recalibrating again, trying to decide which version of the truth he could still control. It's being managed, he said finally. Structured. Allocated where it needs to go. That's not an answer, Howard said. Ethan's eyes flicked toward him, irritation rising again. This isn't a courtroom, he said. No, I replied. But it's full of people who deserve one clear answer. Silence. Then I stepped forward just slightly. The initial transfers from the Cook Heritage Fund didn't go directly to any educational program, I said. They didn't go toward property preservation. I paused. They went through an intermediary account first. A few people exchanged glances. That alone was enough to raise concern. And from there I continued. At least one of those transfers was routed to a business account. Now the room shifted harder. Chairs creaked. Someone whispered louder than they meant to. Ethan shook his head quickly. You don't have the full picture, he said. That's standard structuring whose account someone called out. He didn't answer. Not right away. So I did. It's registered under a holding company, I said. But the listed officer, I stopped just short of finishing the sentence. Not for drama. For precision. Because once I said it, there was no stepping back. Ethan stared at me. A warning or a plea. I couldn't tell which anymore. His Ethan Cook. The room didn't explode. It collapsed inward, sound dropped, air tightened. Attention narrowed to a single point. Him. That's not what it looks like, he said immediately. But his voice had changed. The certainty was gone. What does it look like then? The same man asked. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing once something I'd never seen him do in public. It's temporary, he said. A holding structure. The money isn't mine, it's just parked there while we figure out distribution. Under your control, I said. Under management, he corrected. Without authorization, I replied. That hit, because now the pieces lined up. Signature, control, money, all pointing in the same direction. I didn't take anything he said louder now. I was trying to stabilize things. The fund needed structure. Someone had to step in. And that someone was you, I said. Yes, he snapped, because no one else would. The words hung there, raw, unfiltered. For a moment, I almost felt the truth inside them. Not justification, but motivation. He wasn't pretending anymore. I was trying to fix what was already broken. He continued, breathing harder now. Mom was drowning in debt. The house, the loans, this wasn't sustainable. My mother didn't interrupt. She didn't deny it. She just stood there still. You think donors care about internal family problems, he went on. They care about outcomes, about impact. And we were building something that could actually help. By forging a signature, I asked. He didn't answer that. Because he couldn't. By using my name to create trust you hadn't earned, I added. Still nothing. The silence said more than anything else. Howard stepped in slightly. If funds have been redirected through a personal or controlled entity without proper authorization, he said, that introduces significant legal exposure. Ethan let out a sharp breath. There it is, he said. Legal exposure. That's what this is about for you, right? He looked at me now, not angry. Something else. You've always needed everything to be clean, documented, controlled, he said. But real life doesn't work like that. No, I said. But accountability does. That landed harder than anything else, because it wasn't emotional. It was final. A woman in the second row spoke up. I donated because I trusted this family, she said. Are you telling me my money went into your business account? Ethan shook his head quickly. No, that's not. Then where is it? She pressed. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked toward my mother. For help. She didn't give it. Not this time, because the answer, whatever it was, wasn't one she could control anymore. I can account for it, he said finally. Every dollar. Then you will, Howard replied. That shifted the tone again, from confrontation to consequence. Ethan looked at me one last time. You really did this, he said. Not accusing, almost impressed. Or maybe just realizing I didn't do anything I said. I stopped ignoring it. That was the truth, the simplest version of it, the one that had been there all along. Around us, the room had changed. People weren't just watching anymore. They were deciding who they believed, what they'd do next, and whether they'd stay. Because this wasn't a celebration anymore. It was a turning point. And for the first time since I arrived, the outcome wasn't something my family could script. No one applauded when it ended. There was no clean closing, no polite transition back to music or speeches. People stood slowly, like they were waking up from something they hadn't realized they were part of. Some walked toward the exits. Some stayed in place quietly talking to each other. A few came forward, not toward Ethan, not toward my mother toward me. "I need to know what happens next," the woman from the second row said. Her voice wasn't angry anymore, just steady. "You'll be contacted," Howard answered before I could. "Anyone who contributed will receive formal communication once the records are reviewed." She nodded once, then stepped back. Others followed that pattern. Short questions, short answers, no drama, just a quiet shift in trust. Ethan didn't try to stop them. He had stepped off to the side now, one hand braced against the edge of a table like he needed something solid. For the first time that night, he looked tired, not defeated, but no longer in control. My mother stood a few feet away from him, arms folded tightly, eyes moving between us like she was still trying to calculate a version of this that she could fix. There wasn't one. Howard turned slightly toward me. "I'll coordinate with the officers outside and follow up on the filings," he said. "You don't need to stay." I nodded. "Thank you," I said. He gave a small nod in return, then stepped away, already pulling out his phone. Jasmine had been right. Once it started, it didn't stay contained. I took a breath and looked around the room one more time. At the decorations, the lighting, the carefully constructed version of a family that had almost worked. Almost. Valentina. I turned. "My mother." Denise didn't raise her voice this time. She didn't try to pull me aside or control the space. She just stood there. "We didn't think it would go this far," she said. I studied her for a second. "That's the problem," I replied. "You didn't think it through at all." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she glanced toward Ethan. "He was trying to help," she said quietly. "I know," I said. That surprised her. "He said the same thing," I added. She looked back at me. "And you still did this?" I held her gaze. I still told the truth. That was the difference. Not punishment. Not revenge. Just clarity. Ethan walked over, then slower this time. No performance. No audience. Just the three of us. "I can fix it," he said. Not defensive. Not aggressive. Just trying. "I can move the funds back, restructure everything, make it clean." I believed him, in a way that made it harder. "Maybe you can," I said. He nodded quickly, like that was enough. "But you don't get to do it through me," I added. That stopped him. "You're cutting me out?" he asked. "I'm stepping out," I said. "There's a difference." Silence. Not heavy this time. Just honest. "You're really done," he said. I thought about that. About all the times I'd stayed quiet, let things slide, told myself it wasn't worth the conflict. "I'm done being used," I said. That was closer to the truth. My mother looked between us again. "And what happens now?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, because for once, I didn't need to decide everything in that moment. "Now," I said slowly, "you deal with the consequences of the choices you made. Not harsh, not cold, just accurate." I picked up my bag. No one tried to stop me this time. As I walked toward the exit, the room felt different. Not lighter, but clearer. Outside, the evening air hit cooler than I expected. The patrol car was still there. So was the quiet hum of something that hadn't fully settled yet. I stood there for a second, letting it all catch up. The anger had passed. The shock, too. What was left wasn't victory. It was space. The kind you only get when you finally draw a line and hold it. My phone buzzed. A message from Jasmine. "You okay?" I smiled faintly. "Yeah," I typed back. "I think I am." A few weeks later, things moved the way legal processes always do, slowly, methodically, without the noise of that night. The fund was frozen, transactions reviewed, statements taken. Some money was recovered, some still under investigation. I didn't follow every detail. I didn't need to. What mattered had already happened. I updated my accounts, locked down my information, set boundaries that didn't depend on anyone else agreeing with them. A few relatives reached out, quietly, not to take sides, but to say they understood. That mattered more than I expected. As for my mother and Ethan, we didn't talk. Not because I was waiting for an apology, but because I wasn't willing to pretend nothing had changed. And it had. Not just them. Me. If there's one thing I took from all of this, it's this. You don't protect a family by covering for its mistakes. You protect it by refusing to let those mistakes become normal. And sometimes the most honest thing you can do is step outside of it. There's a difference between revenge and boundaries. Revenge tries to balance pain with more pain. Boundaries simply say, this is where I stop being part of something that harms me, and that difference matters especially when it comes to family. If you've ever been put in a position where your loyalty was used against you, where your silence was expected, where your name or your trust was taken for granted, you're not alone. And you're not wrong for choosing clarity over comfort. Forgiveness doesn't mean reopening the door to the same behavior. It doesn't mean restoring access to people who haven't taken responsibility. Sometimes forgiveness is internal. Boundaries are external, and both can exist at the same time. I'd really like to hear your perspective. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Have you ever had to draw a line with your own family, and how did that change things for you? If this story resonated with you, you can stay with me for more stories like this. Not because they're perfect, but because they're real in the ways that matter. This is a fictional story created for entertainment, education, and reflection.